All right, so I'm back today with Ethan Buchman, co-founder of Cosmos, CEO of Informal System. He has the sweatshirt today. We can barely see it, but I recognize it. And president of the ICF. And that's actually what we want to talk about today, the day when the ICF was born and the following couple of years after that, because Ethan worked at the ICF for a time and he can talk about it from that perspective. And in a subsequent video, I think we'll probably have Maria from the ICF or someone from the ICF talking directly from the ICF perspective about the ICF today. So this video is really about the history of the ICF. Starting, I think, in 2017, Ethan, that's when it was all set up. So maybe you can talk first about the reason for setting this up in the first place.
Yeah, sure. So we were at, so Jay and I were at All in Bits in 2016, and we had published the Cosmos white paper that summer, and it was getting a lot of excitement. We had already built a lot of the technology. We had built the core pieces of Tendermint, and we had some early prototypes of things you could build on top and stuff like that. And it seemed important. All in Bits was set up as a for-profit American entity, and it seemed important that there be a nonprofit foundation to function as kind of a long-term steward for the technology and to support the growth of the ecosystem and to complement the development team that we'd be building at All in Bits. And a similar model was sort of followed or pioneered by Ethereum and by other kind of projects. And so to some extent, the ICF sort of followed in Ethereum's footsteps. The Ethereum Foundation was set up in Switzerland, and they had sort of laid the groundwork for how to do that, for how to set up a nonprofit foundation to support kind of long-term R&D heavy development in the space on this open source decentralized technology. And so the ICF followed suit. So it was set up as a Swiss nonprofit in early 2017, sort of following the footsteps of Ethereum, and with a mission to support research and development on open decentralized protocols, with a particular focus on Cosmos and the Cosmos network. And so that gave it both a broad enough but also specific enough mandate for to kind of cover all the work it's been doing the last set of years or so, and well into the future, to support the emergence and growth of this internet of blockchains, this interchain, as it were, right? This is called the Interchain Foundation, not the Cosmos Foundation, for a reason, right? It's really about the growth of this of this wider ecosystem, and really focusing on building open source tools that are general purpose tools that any community can use to represent their own values, to build infrastructure and applications that really suit them. And that's the ICF was focused on.
That's an interesting point, that the ICF had the mandate initially to support the growth of the Interchain and not the Cosmos Hub. And that's something that has come up recently, that people are talking a lot about how the Cosmos Hub gets funded, what are the goals for the ICF, what should be the mandates. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about your vision at the time, at the very least. Like, what do you think the ICF would support the Cosmos Hub forever, or do you think there would be some kind of transition into going more into public goods, Tendermint IBC, the Cosmos SDK?
Yeah, for sure. So, a few things. So first of all, a lot of technology had already been built before the ICF was even created, and so there was already kind of a growing community using and working on the open source technology, and so there was already an idea that there's going to be many blockchains, and it's not just about any one blockchain, right? And the technology was already designed to support that, and the ICF was designed to support that. In the white paper, the general wider interchain was referred to as the Cosmos network, and was distinguished from the Cosmos Hub, which was just one particular blockchain. And sort of the idea was that the Cosmos Hub would function as something like an archetype or a prototype of what could be in this wider Cosmos network, in this wider interchain, and that the goal for the ICF would really be to focus on the pieces, the enabling technologies, not just for the Cosmos Hub, but for any blockchain to be able to use and to connect with and to interconnect with. And so the goal was to really focus on that, on those core pieces, on the core sort of open source technology that any blockchain could use, including the Cosmos Hub, but also others, and that each community, the Cosmos Hub community, the other blockchain communities that would form, could sort of take responsibility for funding and developing their own blockchains using the pieces that the ICF was supporting. So that was sort of the idea. And of course, at the time, there was also All in Bits, who was doing a lot of sort of core development on the pieces, but also on the Cosmos Hub. And so I think there was an expectation that kind of All in Bits would take more of a leading role on Cosmos Hub development, while the ICF was sort of focusing more broadly on general specifications and the sort of protocol level interoperability, and really supporting growing the ecosystem, and enabling the sort of growth of a robust decentralized community. There were already a lot of different participants even by the time the ICF was created, that was sort of already a decentralized ecosystem to some extent, and so I think the expectation was that would continue, and the ICF really wouldn't be focused on any one particular chain over time. Obviously, it would have some focus on the Cosmos Hub in the early days, but that would sort of expand to support kind of the general interchain, the general internet of blockchains, and that would be its role as a foundation to support the kind of general emergence of the interchain.
Right. And it kind of makes sense to think about the Cosmos Hub as the test tube of the ICF, where they can test tube blockchain, essentially, where you build the staking module for the hub, then Osmosis can use it. You build the ICS for the hub, then anyone else can use it.
That's right.
Kind of
Yeah,
makes
so
sense.
all of the pieces that the community pulled together to launch the hub are used by many of the other blockchains, right? There was nothing in there that was specific for the Cosmos Hub. The Cosmos Hub was just sort of like the first to pull together the different general purpose pieces of this new interchain stack, the Tendermint and the Cosmos SDK and IBC and the different modules in there, right? And so many of the other blockchains that would launch would take those different pieces and would add their own modules to it, right? And the ICF was funding development of additional modules, but other teams started raising money independently to build their own modules and to launch their own blockchains, and so that was already starting up, and the hub kind of served as as an archetype or a prototype of the kind of blockchains you could build, and sort of showing as an example what could be done. But it's ultimately up to each individual blockchain community to decide how to evolve their system over time. And the ICF was really just focused on what are the core kind of general purpose pieces that will be useful to everyone, and then leave it up to the individual communities to pull them together and to innovate and evolve them over time.
Right, that makes sense. So stepping a little bit away from the stack, let's talk about the structure of the ICF at the time. I'm guessing, being a Swiss foundation, there's a council, there's maybe a board of management. Can you talk about that, and what is a common setup, and what is the ICF setup for in this particular case?
Yeah, so it's common when a Swiss foundation is set up. So these are nonprofits. So they don't have any shareholders. They have a foundation council, which is sort of the equivalent of a board of directors, and that's kind of the highest level organizing body. With a minimum of 3 people. And these nonprofits have to do a lot of reporting, so they have a sort of direct supervisory authority with the government, and so they have to report to them every year. So when the ICF was set up, both Jay and I were members of the council. Jay was the president. I was the vice president. There was a third member who's a Swiss resident who joined the foundation council. And then in 2018, the ICF hired a CFO/COO. That was Michael Niederer. So he joined. He was in Switzerland, and so he sort of took over a lot of the sort of day-to-day operations of the Interchain Foundation, and he also brought on sort of an in-house accountant to help with the reporting and the accounting and everything. And then in 2019, we can get into that, but Ariane and I and a few others would move from All in Bits to the foundation, and so Ariane and I joined the board of management and helped with the sort of day-to-day operations. But otherwise, it just we just hired employees kind of directly and worked together as a small team.
Right. So for context and people that may not have watched the first video, Ariane is the current CEO of Informal, and she followed you at the ICF, I think, along with Jarko, who is the current CTO of Informal as well. Yep. Can you talk about that move to the ICF in 2019? What was the reason behind it? And what was the reason behind it first?
Yeah. So we were working at All in Bits together, as per the last video. Ariane and Jarko both joined in 2017 and had a very significant impact on All in Bits at the time. And I was working with both of them in sort of different capacities on different things. With Ariane, we were working on a lot of operational things, and we're very interested in there was a growing ecosystem of teams, developers, people, communities outside of All in Bits that were eager to participate in and support and work on Cosmos. It was already kind of growing decentralized ecosystem, and we wanted to better support that. And we felt that the ICF and the nonprofit structure was a good entity to kind of build up some capacity and help support that growing decentralized ecosystem. And with Jarko, sort of similar things. Jarko was very interested in expanding research collaborations and working with other universities and research labs, and was already starting to do that a little bit at All in Bits, but was really motivated to kind of grow that function at the ICF, sort of again leveraging the sort of nonprofit status to do it in a way that was grounded and sort of in everyone's interest and sort of for the long term. And so over the course of 2018, the 3 of us were all kind of motivated to further support the ICF, to grow the capacity there, and ultimately that would lead us to move over to the ICF by early 2019 and start really help build up the programs to better support this burgeoning decentralized ecosystem that was growing all around us.
So we're in 2019. You get to the ICF. What's on the agenda here? What is the first day of Ethan in the office in the ICF look like?
So there's already a lot going on. All in Bits, was building a lot of software. There was a number of other entities besides All in Bits that was also building software, and a lot of sort of loose decentralized coordination, as we're all sort of used to. There was the game of stakes was happening at the time, so that was the sort of big adversarial incentivized testnet. There were many participants in that. I think over 100 or so. So sort of early validator community coming together, and that was surfacing some bugs and some things that needed to be fixed before the Cosmos Hub launched. And we had hired a few engineers already already at the ICF in early 2019. And so we were all working on some of those, working with the folks at All in Bits and others in the community on preparing the software to go live and so fixing some of those last minute bugs. There was some, I remember there was a serious crack in the Tendermint proposal selection that got surfaced during the Game of Stakes that people were figuring out how to exploit on the Game of Stakes testnet. And so, we spent a bunch of time on the sort of protocol design for that. And, Chris Goes, who was at All in Bits at the time, was doing a little bit of formal methods work on that. And we were supporting that. And Anka Zamfir had joined us at the ICF. So she was working on that and did a lot of work on sort of fixing those bugs. So there's a lot of prep, just kind of finalizing the production readiness of the software and working on pulling together details about the fundraiser so that everyone could basically reproduce for themselves the results of the fundraiser that the ICF did in 2019. Right, the ICF raised Bitcoin and Ether back in 2017, and leading up to the launch of the Cosmos Hub, you sort of anyone had to be able to verify for themselves the results of that fundraiser so that they could determine what the initial atom set should be, and so there was a lot of work on making sure anyone could reproduce that for themselves and read the Bitcoin blockchain and the Ethereum blockchain and so on. It's all that stuff, preparing the software for production. But ultimately, when the hub launched in March of 2019, the ICF didn't play any kind of direct role in the launch, and neither did All in Bits. It was sort of unprecedented for the level of decentralization and community engagement that went into that launch. And so that was that was really amazing to witness. But it took some preparation to ensure that would be possible, that the community would be in a position that they're able to kind of take responsibility for launching this new kind of blockchain kind of by themselves in this very decentralized way. And so there's a lot of focus on really enabling and ensuring this kind of robust, decentralized, responsible community was able to form and launch a blockchain, and that others would be able to do a similar thing.
And so the community, by community, I think you mean the Cosmos Hub validators at the time.
The early validators, and it wasn't just validators, because there was there's block explorers and there's other kinds of service providers and node operators and developers who are writing integrations and stuff like that. So a lot of it was the validators for sure. And I think there was in the launch set there was like 67 validators or so, and they had to coordinate to do a Genesis ceremony and agree on a Genesis file and all that sort of stuff. And so it was really amazing to see them kind of come together and launch this proof of stake blockchain in this incredibly decentralized way, and really in a way that had never been done before. So that was really remarkable.
Is there any validator that comes to mind or entity that was really helpful in the launch that we can shout out and that at least that you remember? I'm guessing it's putting you on the spot here, so you may forget an important one, but at least someone that.
Well, there was like 67 of them, right? So go check out the early Genesis file and the early Genesis ceremony. It's all on GitHub, and you can see the initial list of validators that launched the Cosmos Hub. So they all played a key role there. The initial distribution of voting power was actually I think it was uniform in the initial launch. It might not have been purely uniform, but it was pretty close. And then very quickly after the launch, delegations started happening, and so the voting power started to change over time. But
yeah, I think it's a great point. So everything is on GitHub, so people can go and check out these pristine, untouched files that are still sitting there. Yeah. And people do. I know there's a lot of people that like blockchain truthing work, and you can check by yourself. We put that in the show notes, so the links to these Genesis files. They are extremely interesting to see and very, very transparent. Another thing that I think was quite transparent at the time, and there was like an effort in that. I found in doing a little bit of research, I found like 10-ish articles about the grants that were handed out back in 2019, 2020. There's like a snapshot of the treasury. Can you talk about these entities that received grants at the time? Which kind of projects got funded? What were you looking for with these grants? What was the process of getting a grant? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So, as I mentioned, there was even starting in 2017, there was a growing ecosystem of other development teams and communities that were working on Cosmos, and in addition to All in Bits, of course. And so, early on, the ICF was supporting some development on things like key management and early kinds of cryptography. The ICF was supporting a lot of early research, both for Cosmos, but also for the general progression of the blockchain ecosystem. So the ICF it was one of the founding partners in the Stanford Blockchain Research Center. Center. So along with a number of other foundations, it gave a large grant to Stanford to really bootstrap a research center for the long term to kind of continue core blockchain research and distributed systems and cryptography and so on. And they host a conference every year on sort of academic research in this world. And so the ICF has been supporting a lot of sort of things like that at University of California, Berkeley, and at EPFL in Switzerland, and other institutions in Switzerland and elsewhere in the world. So there's been a lot of focus on funding research in the long term, and Informal would ultimately kind of emerge from some of that research oriented funding, especially on distributed systems and formal methods. And we'll get into all of that in the Informal video. But there's a lot of development also being funded at the time. I mentioned sort of key management stuff and cryptography, but there was also block explorers being funded as early as 2018. Figment, I think, was getting an early grant to build one of the first block explorers. So they were one of the very early validators participating in the test nets that were running in 2018. So a lot of these top validators got their start really in, I think we mentioned this in the last video, in the Cosmos test nets, and were really eager to contribute, and they were already building software, and they wanted to build more software, and the ICF wanted to support them. And so in 2019, Ariane and I started to really try to professionalize the funding program at the ICF, and so we put together like a request for proposals on different kind of subjects, and so people all across the ecosystem would make proposals for funding, and so we were really looking to expand the ecosystem into other languages, other environments, support for new smart contracting languages. I think there were like 5 different smart contracting languages being built and funded in 2019. There was obviously there was an early version of Ethermint. There was Cosmwasm, which got started at the hackathon in 2019, which the ICF has been supporting since the very beginning. There was a Agoric smart contract machine, which was coming together and which was being integrated with the Cosmos SDK with a bit of support from the ICF. Of course, Agoric had raised its own funding and was building its own thing, and so a lot of these teams, they also had kind of independent funding to build their systems, but the ICF wanted to ensure that they were also, as part of what they were building open source and in a kind of general purpose way, and so it would also support them. There were a few other virtual machines there. We wrote a whole article about all the virtual machines coming to Cosmos, so you can find that online, and other kinds of community development and different kinds of impact projects that were being focused on. The ICF started working with the Regen Network team. It was funding different hackathons and conferences and other kinds of initiatives to really support the impact of these projects in the real world, right? I mean, it's always been part of the ICF's mandate and vision, not just to build this technology, but to ensure that this technology can actually have impact in helping real people, real communities build wealth and improve their socioeconomic circumstances. And that's that's something sometimes we lose track of in all the focus about core technology and stuff, but I think is really important North Star in all of this for Cosmos, for the ICF, for Informal, and for everything we're doing. So yeah, you can read about all this online. There's a lot of detail in the GitHub, the early funding repository, and then there's a lot of blog posts that were being published on the ICF's Medium accounts. You can see all the early funding recipients and so on.
Yeah, I think that gives us a good overview of how the ICF got its start. I think what we want to do for another video is invite Maria, as I mentioned, from the ICF, and talk about the current grant program and the current process and the current efforts around transparency. But that will leave for another video. And together, Ethan, I think one we want to do together is the Informal one, how Informal spun out of the ICF and what exactly we were funded to do over the last couple of years. 3 years, I believe, since that was 2020. That's a story for another time. I think we can wrap this video up today, and let's talk in the next one.
Sounds great. Thanks, Thibaut. Take care.